They can't break me down. They can't break
I
me down.
lost years of my life because of the disease. And then there was the depression aspect of it where I was basically, I don't know how to describe it. Mentally, I just checked out, and I'm finding myself going to a part that you and I discussed about that I wasn't sure if I wanted to mention because as much as this is part of life and people do go through their highs and lows, sometimes people are not understanding of other struggles, regardless to what caused it. But when I came back, I've met so many individuals, older and younger, who would have gone through it, whether if it's from their own mental illness, whether if it is from a divorce in a marriage, or even when I was in Taiwan, one of my design professor, when I was going through that depression, she said that, she commend me for trying to deal with it and to find or seek help, I should say, seek professional help in dealing with it. Because at the time, as I mentioned before, that's what I thought it was. And I realized it was affecting my abilities or my performance in school. And I can't continue like this. I have to fix it. But she also stated that even her peers and her friends who are working professionals and they're going through their own depression for whatever reason, but they're afraid to talk about it. Or, in some countries, suicide rate is very high, and some people take that door out and they might think it's the easiest. I said, no, it's one of the hardest decisions you have to make because that means you've come to a point where you've lost all sense of hope. And I've been there before because when you're frustrated and you don't know what is wrong with you and you cannot perform or you're not performing the way that you can and you should, you just feel like if you're a disappointment to God or to your family and even to yourself. And even when I got to that part where I lost all sense of hope, I couldn't because there were only two things or two individuals I saw in my mind, and it was my mom and God. And I know how devastating it would have been to my mother because she wasn't even aware that I wasn't doing well when I contracted COVID. I was in shock because
Whoa.
I remember the first, if I am correct, I'm pretty sure the first person who died from COVID in St. Vincent was a lupus person, well, someone who had lupus. And I was terrified. I don't think there was no vaccine at the time. And you realize the people who were affected the most or considered high risk were also those who had autoimmune disorders. So, even when I contracted, I was vaccinated. I wasn't against the vaccine. I just wanted the vaccine to complete its trial just to see, because even some of the doctors, the rheumatologists in the States, some were for taking the vaccine before the trial period completed because you don't want to take something that would have an effect on your immune system. So some would say, you know what, worst case scenario is better to have it than to not have the vaccine. So my doctor encouraged me to take the vaccine, but he prepped me for at least 2 weeks before I took the vaccine because I had a history of blood clots. And we decided which of the vaccine was best suited for my health condition. And I took it and I was completely fine. Um, and I tried to take all the necessary precautions to not contract COVID at all. When I went to the nurse, she said it didn't even take any time, it just showed up. And I cried in tears because I didn't know what that meant, even though I was vaccinated. So, even after contracting that and speaking to my doctor and ended up speaking to one of the doctors in St. Lucia, where they also have rheumatologists, they advised on certain vitamins I need to take because I was already deficient in vitamin D, which is also a symptom of lupus, or a lot of lupus patients are deficient in vitamin D, I should say. And I didn't know I was deficient, even though when you look back at the symptoms you've experienced throughout the years, you would have realized you were exhibiting signs of deficiency in vitamin D, your hair loss, even from the dental aspect of it, where your tooth is chipping and cracking very easily, or, just even for hormonal or your mood change, and it's just not enough vitamin D you're getting. But um, it was quite a journey because of the lot of changes and the adjustments you have to make. And as she said, even with COVID, you're already deficient in vitamin D. Having COVID would make it even worse. So even with your supplements you have to take, there are extra supplements or higher dose of supplements that you have to take, and just your overall lifestyle. And you cannot go, less than how many hours of sleep. I mean, we do that off and on, but you're in a particular category where you cannot afford to, because, one of the triggers for lupus is fatigue, or not fatigue, sorry, but one of the triggers is just lack of sleep. And even though certain medication do cause lack of sleep, or it interrupts your sleep pattern, or you're not, how to put it, I probably as simple as just explain that you're not getting a full or good night's rest. All of those things interrupt your sleep cycle. So it's like you can't win. You need to take this medication, but then in taking it over a course of years, these are the side effects to it. So you take it as it comes and try to fix
It's
the
like
other issues.
a circus show balancing act. You have to be very, very careful with the effects of your medication compared to what you need to
Oh
do
yes,
to stay in
oh
remission.
yes, oh
Wow.
yes. So
What
it's,
was, yeah,
sorry.
how did your family and your friends react to your diagnosis, and what sort of support have they been able to give you?
I think I'm lucky to have, a strong support team, especially for my family. They're always there. I have family relatives who, whether if they're checking in, but they would pray with me or they would send messages. So they're always very supportive. So I'm very fortunate to have family and friends who understand, and they understand that you can't do certain things anymore. I do miss certain aspects of the life I used to live. Even if they're going on sea trips, boating trips, and I can't be in peak time. I can't be in the sun for too long or direct sunlight, even though I do wear my sunblock all the time, like literally every day. But you can't do family activities together if it's outside during the peak. Outside during peak time, unless it's early morning or late evening, or what else that you can do. Like sometimes your body is just, you just going through it and you can't make it to certain events and you just have to rest. And sometimes you learn the hard way not to push your body beyond what it can do. But overall, my family, they're very supportive and understanding. And even when I was going through that period in 2018, trying to figure out what was causing the health issues that I was having, I would speak to, I think, individually or as a group, and I would always tell them, if anything is to ever happen to me, I know they would, but it's just a reminder to look out for my mom, because I think I worry the most about her, because like I said, I'm her only child. And even though till this day I tease her about it to say, you really should have taken out your insurance policy, but too late now. No, but she doesn't like to hear it. But I'm like, Mommy, you need to talk about this because, life is so unpredictable and you just never know what would happen. So you have to be comfortable with having these conversations. I think, I use humor not just in dealing with like chronic illness, but I think I've found humor to cope with all the stresses in my life. And I think, looking back from 20s to 30s, in hindsight, you wouldn't know, but a lot of things that you're trying to correct, you're trying to make perfect. You're trying to, not be a disappointment, and you're going against what you physically can do, and trying to change things that is just outside of your control. So, going forward, you have, your friends and your family, and even sometimes maybe your pastor, or you find your favorite sermon to give you words of encouragement or support, or to give you that mental strength, because it's not easy. And I brought up COVID from this year because after with COVID, like I've had COVID for a good while, and my body wasn't able to bounce back as fast. Like, some people said COVID was like that for them. Oh no, COVID went on for me for a while, which triggered my lupus. So I had COVID and lupus back to back. And I think what happened, I can't remember if it was around that time, but I remember I went to my doctor, and I think I was having, I don't know if it was a low moment where I just felt a bit sad and depressed, because you're just tired of always feeling sick and just not feeling well. And even though last year was such a great year for me health wise, because I didn't have any flare up, but I think because I was consistent with my medication and just doing what I felt I need to do for my body, I had it under control. But because of COVID, you're back to square one again. But I think I was going through like an emotional roller coaster and felt a little bit depressed about it, but it was going on a little bit longer than I anticipated it would. So I know my doctor gave me a medication to help with my mood, but and that is because also the one of my medication that I was taking for lupus, which is um, steroids, which is the prednisolone. I think it's either that or the other one, but being on it for so many years, it was affecting my mood. So I was feeling a bit depressed. So you now have to take another set of medication to counteract that. I wish I can say it's like a 1 + 1 = 2, a formula recipe approach to how to deal with it. But even with taking your medication or not drinking dairy or trying not to consume anything that would affect you hormonally that can also trigger lupus, you reduce your stress level. Sometimes in doing all that may seem the best way, it's still not good enough. So I just learned it is what it is. You deal with everything one day at a time. But I am thankful that in my experiences compared to some individuals, because I know seizure is one of the symptoms as well. I've never had that, and I'm thankful I've never had that, because I cannot imagine being somewhere where I don't know anyone and I'm basically, I don't want to say incapacitated, but I don't want something to happen to me where anything worst case can happen to you. If I explain it properly, because I know I'm not
And yeah,
explaining it
and you
the way
don't want
that
to be alone in a situation
yeah,
like that.
I don't
No,
want
not a
that to
familiar
ever
face.
happen. Yeah. And
Yeah.
then, the people around you may not know what to do. So I'm thankful for it, but I know that there are other women in particular who experience it. It's not that men don't experience or men don't have lupus, but it's more prominent with
In
women,
women.
especially
Yes.
yeah. But you just try to make whatever preparations that you can, and to do your regular lab tests. You're supposed to do your regular lab tests every couple of months, just to see how your body is doing, regardless to how you feel, and not just when you're not feeling well. But it's um it's still a journey, because even in your childbearing age, in 2018, my doctor, when I first met my first um, rheumatologist doctor in Grenada, and we were going through my medical records and asking various questions. And when it came to pregnancy, and he said, no, you shouldn't be thinking about getting pregnant right now. He said that when it comes to pregnancy, you have to plan it. You cannot just spontaneously get pregnant because like every other health issue or whatever it is, if you do get pregnant, your immune system is looking at your fetus as a foreign entity. And, your chances of miscarriages would be high. So you have to at least be in 6 months remission or at least have no flare up. And you have to prep your body to prepare for pregnancy. So it's a lot of information that you have to take in and to do research and to make sure that wherever you are, you have to be in a country that provide excellent healthcare, especially for high risk pregnancy in that case. So I always knew that if I wanted to have kids, I don't think I probably should not be saying this out, but it's the truth. I don't think I would want to have my kids or my child here simply because I'd want to have my child wherever my rheumatologist is or wherever a rheumatologist is somebody who specializes
So
in
that
that
you can have
area.
your condition managed properly
Yes,
because you're dealing with
yes,
several different issues.
yes.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Ilona, on a happier note, you said in 2018 you had to come back to St. Vincent. You weren't yet finished university, but you are now a qualified architect, a qualified engineer. How did that happen?
It took me a long time to even have this conversation because I don't think if you didn't know me, um, or should I say understand, I was always, I don't want to say a high achiever, but I bit off more than I can chew, or you overestimating yourself. So you're pushing yourself more and trying to do so many things at the same time. So any form of failure, incompletion, or anything of along that line, it's you're failed. You didn't perform at your best in spite of or despite whatever it is that you're going through. You're not even taking those things into consideration. All you just saw was that you failed. And in your early 20s, you have a vision of your life, and half of it, or more than half, or 80% to 90%, is not what I expected or where I am now. And you have to come to grips of the things that you had to change and the things that you had to do to get where you are. But I believe that, life is not linear and things happen along the way. It doesn't mean that you should no longer complete or fulfill your dream. If this is what you love to do and this is what you want to do, then forget what anybody else may say or think and you just focus on yourself because where you start is not where you end, and it's your choice and how you want your life to be. And it's not always going to be easy, but that is life. That's how I just chalk it up to life, and you do what is necessary.
So
Everyone is
what made you jump back into university and completing your studies?
because I've had a dream, or I don't want to say dream, it sounds so cliche, but I've always known what I wanted in life. I may not know the specific parts of it, but I always knew what I wanted. I always knew what I wanted, but I always knew what I was good at. And I always tell people that I was always good at designing and creating. It doesn't matter if it's architecture, if it's painting or drawing. I just love creating and designing. And if I wanted to be this particular individual, you know, these are the requirements that you have to fulfill. I always say that many of what do you call it? Many are called, but few are chosen. And it's up to you to fulfill or to push through whatever it is that you're going through to get to that other side. And it's not going to be easy, but you have to push through it, figure it out, get the help that you need, ignore everything that everybody has to say because people are going to say. And I've heard those comments before, and it wasn't
Actually,
even closest to the truth.
your going there actually brings me to a question that I wanted to ask you. You
Mm-hmm,
mentioned the fact that when you were feeling ill, you didn't want to tell anybody that you were ill because you had to appear to be strong and you had to
mm-hmm.
to appear to be in control of things. And I know there's this stigma about, oh, she's sickly, she always sick, every Monday morning she's sick. So you really don't want to have to deal with that. And then you said one of your lecturers said to you that she admired the fact that you went and sought help, because the thing is so stigmatized in her neck of the woods that people prefer to kill themselves rather than to just take a hands-on approach to dealing with it. How have you been dealing with the stigmatization associated with this invisible illness?
I think because I've just learned to accept it. Before, as much as I did say I accept it because your lab test is showing it, so you have no choice but to accept what your lab test is telling you. But mentally, like some people can still be living in denial regardless of what the paper in front of you is saying. I was that person. But I had to accept it because I think when you think of everything you want to achieve in life, in order for you to achieve all of these things, these are the things you have to get past or get through. So you have to manage these things in order to pursue the other parts of it. And psychologically, I always say that I'm a person of a strong faith. It's not just having strong family or strong support or your closest friends around you. But I always say that my faith with God and my belief in God is much stronger than anything. In the last how many weeks, I swear like the devil is just busy. It's like a spiritual warfare back to back, of the amount of challenges that you meet. And it's just not a professional challenge. It's not just interpersonal challenge with dealing with different individuals, but your own health challenge where it just never seems to stop. Can I get a break at least? But you have to look at life in the glass half full. And I believe in being optimistic and being positive and just be your best cheerleader, your biggest supporter.
If you were able to make a choice of one of your favorite things from life before lupus and you were able to get it back, what would that be?
I think this is probably one of the hardest things to say because it's tied into what I've finally overcome. And what I've finally overcome is being open to talk about what happened during those years of in university when I couldn't complete my program. Because in that stage of my life, I kept a lot to myself because I felt embarrassed and ashamed. And it's until, like I said before, years later, you find out what was crippling you, but you were compounding the situation because you were keeping everything inside of you. Sometimes the personal or the very personal things you don't want to share. And I had to disclose that with a girl who became like a friend, like a sister friend of mine, because I could have seen she was spiraling. And there were so many things that she was keeping to herself that nobody really knew. But I went through one of the things that she went through, and you had to share that with her, as personal as it was, so that she knows that she's not alone. So, now compared to then, to take back, and it's before lupus, it's just to take back that not having that shame and guilt.
What would you want people to know and understand about people with invisible illnesses?
I remember the video, the first one that you sent to me with a lady, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was like a conversation you're having because, she said some things that is quite true, which is also linked to other illnesses, regardless to what it is. Even if you have a mental illness or you suffer from chronic illness and whatever, people respond basically the same. And, they give you labels and you're being pushed aside or I can't deal with that person. And it's like, there are better way to treat a human being. I wish people were a bit more understanding that life happens. Sometimes you don't ask for these things, it just happens. But to be understanding of each other and be a bit more, I don't want to say a bit more, to show more compassion, I think. It seems to be a missing element that we have with each other. I can't believe I'm quoting Tupac's song, but he made a song called Sleep is the Cousin of Death. My God, I'm doing this on the program. But life is just not promised.
Ilona, throughout this program, you dropped little nuggets of advice for people suffering with invisible illnesses. If you were to reflect on those pieces of advice, what would you say would be the four most important pieces that you can share with persons like yourself who are afflicted with invisible illnesses?
4. I almost give you like 440. You have to be your own advocate. Actually, my doctor told me that one because I was ignoring all of my health issues or symptoms that I was having at the time. And he said that no one is going to feel or experience what you experience except for you. So you have to be your best advocate. Regardless of what anyone thinks, you have to speak up for yourself and do what's best for you. So that is one. It's important to have a strong, supportive team around you. Even if it's just one person, one can be a lot. If you have one close friend, one is enough. To You have to do your research. Sometimes you may not know how to cope with whatever it is that you're going through, and sometimes the information is not out at hand, or you can't find actual individuals in your own environment, and you have to go online and research and reach outside of your own country if need be, because they are there. Even for lupus, whether if it's arthritis, Sjogren syndrome, whatever mixed connective tissue disorder that you may have, there are groups within the region. The ones that I'm part of is in Grenada and St. Lucia for anyone who might be interested. Like I said, Google is your best friend. Use it. I Google every living thing. And sometimes my doctor said, "What happened? You're a doctor now?" I said no, but I wanted to see what something meant or what it is probably. But I was going to come to you eventually. But do your research and educate yourself, and find people. Ask somebody about somebody, or ask people. St. Vincent is small enough where it's easy to find the people that you need. Somebody knows somebody that you need to know. The group that I'm part of on Facebook, which is an autoimmune disorder group based in the US. And then they have a Lupus Foundation group. But there's so many of them. The one in the US is a very large group and very informative. For me personally, I always say that my faith in God, because it's the strongest part of me. I don't think, and honestly, I shouldn't say I don't think, I know for a fact I wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't for Him. I wouldn't have the strength that I have inside of me if it wasn't for Him. I mean, a lot of paths I could have gone even in my 20s because, I'm trying not to think about it, because it's not because I'm crying for that reason. It's because looking back at 20 something Elona, and I wasn't even 24 at the time. I'm feeling a bit teary eyed. Even before 24, when you're young and you just feel alone and you don't think you could have talked to anyone about it because people have all sorts of perception about you and they may not be able to understand. Some even said that I was lying. Some all said that, they had whatever remarks they want to make, but you have to have a strong sense of self. And that's why I said that my strong sense of self is linked to what I know God says about me and what He ordained me to do or how to be, and to put all of my strength and faith in Him. I speak a lot about that aspect because about 80% outside of the medical advice, majority of it comes from Him, because there are lots of low moments that you go through. And sometimes, even in life with relationships, your chronic illness can affect your relationship with people, not just in platonic, but also in your romantic interest. And you have to have or be with someone who understand what it feels like to have, what if it's chronic, terminal, whatever health issues, but someone who understands and can empathize with you and probably is supportive in the best way that they can, or just to ask you, how can I help you today? What is it that you need from me today? And sometimes it's nothing, anything. And sometimes it's just probably a few minutes of your time just sitting there or a hug. And you know what? And I would say this, Cleo, because I love to hug. It's one of the things that I love to do because I think your time and love is the two greatest gifts to give to people. And it's surprising that a lot of people don't hug. Like when you go to hug them, it's like a foreign thing to them. Like, why are you stiffening up? Relax. But you realize, and even from talking to them, it's because of their journey that they had to toughen up and not be vulnerable because people have either fought against them, they had to fight for their life, they had to fight for so many things they shouldn't have to. So you realize people have lost that softness and even that love. And, all of those things help with whatever it is you're going through, lupus, cancer, Sjogren syndrome, whatever it is, you have to find that softness inside of you to empathize with yourself. That's why I said that in talking about certain things, looking back at my younger self, I felt a bit teary-eyed because you try to be strong to do what you need to do in spite of the criticisms or the negative or derogative comments that were made to you. And you're there young, regardless of your age, you're there not knowing, and you don't even know the reason why you feel the way that you do, but you're being criticized for not being able to do what you're asked to do.
You gave me 4 solid pieces. Research, have strong faith and a sense of
And
awareness.
preventative care,
Be
take
your
care of your
own,
body.
be your own advocate. Find a good support system. You're adding this one. Take care of your body. But I would like
You
to add from
do.
what I got from you that you need to
Mm-hmm.
pace yourself. You
You
need to
do.
pace yourself. There's no point in trying to push forward and eventually end up crashing.
And can I say also, because I'm not sure if anyone, like, I've had friends who contact me to say there's someone who just found out they had lupus and they want to speak to somebody who has it and they don't have any information. They can always feel they're welcome to message to ask me about it. You can find me on Instagram at Elona Alexander, or you can email me. I cannot believe I'm giving my email address, but you can email me at alexander.ilona@gmail.com. Feel free to message me, or if they want to speak to me or to inquire, what rheumatologists that I speak to who are my doctors, because they're based here, St. Lucia and Grenada as well. So if you need any information, you could also ask me about those 3 contacts. You
Elona,
do.
this has
Hi,
been a
Cleo.
most enlightening and interesting discussion, and I learned so much from talking to you. I want to thank you very much for being here with me on Life No Sugar Added. I want to just say how much I admire your perseverance and how you have managed to just surmount all of the challenges that you have encountered in your journey with lupus, and the fact that you have a plan to move on with grace. So I want to just tell you how much I find that inspiring as well. And I hope that your story touches someone, not necessarily someone who has an invisible illness, but perhaps someone who was unaware that someone that they're close to was actually suffering with an invisible illness, and perhaps they can now change their approach to dealing with that person. From all of us here at Sweet Radio SVG, I want to wish you all the best. We have a saying at the end of each program, Ubuntu, and it simply means I am because you are. I am much more enlightened now because you are such a willing person in terms of talking about lupus and everything that is involved in a situation such as yours.
Thank you so much for having me, Cleo.
They can't break me down. Yeah.